Carson Hocevar has delivered his strongest message yet heading into COTA. And if anyone thought the chaos at Atlanta was going to force him to change his style, they were wrong. Completely wrong. The real story right now isn't just that Hocevar remains one of the most talked about drivers in NASCAR after Atlanta. It's that he has now put an end to the Hendrick speculation, leaned into the Hurricane nickname, addressed the Dale Earnhardt comparisons, and made it clear to the entire garage that he has no intention of becoming a different driver just because people are upset. That's exactly why this moment matters so much, going into the DuraMAX Texas Grand Prix at COTA. We're going to unpack what sparked all this attention after Atlanta, what Hocevar said about Richard Petty, comparing him to Dale Earnhardt, the message he sent to drivers hinting at payback, how he truly feels about the Hurricane nickname catching on, and finally, the contract news that may have just shut down a massive rumor for the foreseeable future. Honestly, this might be the most revealing stretch of interviews Hocevar has given so far, because he didn't just respond to the criticism, he fully embraced who he is. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to go back to Atlanta. Hocevar's race there was classic Carson Hocevar. Fast, chaotic, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. He went 2 laps down early, clawed his way back to the front, inserted himself into every major late race moment, played a role in the Christopher Bell overtime wreck, and still came home fourth. That exact combination is why opinions in the garage remain divided. One side sees a driver who constantly puts himself in position to win. The other sees someone who keeps forcing situations that end other drivers' races. And heading into COTA, he's still fourth in the standings and still one of the hottest names in the sport, even without a cup win yet. So when Hocevar spoke this week, everyone paid attention. There were 4 big questions hanging over him. Is he bothered by legends comparing him to Dale Earnhardt? Does he care about veterans suggesting payback is coming? Is he really embracing the Hurricane nickname now that Fox is using it? And most importantly, is he staying at Spire? Or is this just a stepping stone to somewhere bigger, like Hendrick Motorsports? He answered every one of them. And when you put those answers together, they paint a very clear picture of where his mindset is heading into Austin. Let's start with the Richard Petty comparison, because that's no small praise. Petty said Hocevar reminds him of Dale Earnhardt, not because he's destined to be a 7-time champion, but because of how aggressively he races and how he's learning the limits of what he can get away with. Petty explained that Hocevar is doing things that aren't necessarily wrong, and that Earnhardt mastered that same edge over time. That's one of the most respected figures in NASCAR history, comparing Hocevar's instincts to one of the most feared and effective aggressive drivers the sport has ever seen. And Hocevar didn't shy away from it. He didn't downplay it or reject the comparison. He admitted he thought it was cool, and you could tell he meant it. Speaking on the Glitcast, he said it meant a lot coming from Petty. He talked about how much he enjoys watching old races from the 2000s, the 1990s, even the 1980s, and joked that while he might not be everyone's favorite driver, he could be their favorite driver's favorite driver. That response was pure Hocevar, humorous, confident, and fully aware of the role he's beginning to occupy in the sport. But the most important part wasn't the joke, it was what followed. Hocevar made it clear that he's not trying to copy anyone. He said he doesn't get in the car wondering which legendary driver he wants to pretend to be that day. In his words, he's just out there racing. Then he doubled down with a line that says everything. I'm going to be super aggressive. That's the real takeaway. The Petty comparison may be flattering, but it's not changing how Hocevar races. He's saying outright that his aggression isn't an act or a persona, it's simply who he is behind the wheel. That mindset flows directly into the second major topic, the warnings about retaliation. Since Atlanta, voices across the NASCAR world have suggested that if Hocevar keeps putting drivers in tough spots, someone is eventually going to respond intentionally. Hocevar clearly hears that chatter, and his response this week surprised a lot of people. Instead of trying to ease tensions, he essentially said fine, but understand the consequences if it's done on purpose. His logic was sharp. He explained that when he makes contact unintentionally, from his perspective, that's one thing. But if someone deliberately tries to get even, that's not balancing the scales. That's escalating the situation. In his mind, intentional payback counts as 2 points on the scorecard, while his aggressive mistake counts as 1. That tells you how he differentiates between racing hard and being intentionally dirty. That might be the most revealing thing he said all week. He's not claiming he's flawless. He's saying there's a clear difference between pushing the limits in competition and lining someone up intentionally later. Not everyone in the garage will agree with that logic, and many drivers probably see it as exactly why he frustrates them so much. But it shows that he has a clear internal framework. In his mind, he's not plotting wrecks, he's making split-second high-risk decisions. And if those decisions go wrong, he still believes that's fundamentally different from deliberate retaliation. Whether fans agree or not, that perspective explains why he stays so calm when payback comes up. Then there's the Hurricane nickname, which has taken on a life of its own. Hocevar is fully aware of that, and he seems more entertained by it than annoyed. He admitted he didn't expect the nickname to stick after the NBC portion of the season ended. He thought it might disappear until the fall or get replaced altogether. But once Fox started using it too, that's when it clicked. It wasn't going away. His reaction was telling. He joked that maybe it was time to make a shirt. That's not someone pushing back against a nickname. That's someone recognizing that the branding has become real. He went even further, calling it a compliment. He pointed out that you can't nickname yourself. It has to come from others. And to him, it's a positive sign that broadcasters see him as fast enough and interesting enough to warrant one. He even said it's good for the sport if he's adding something to the show. Hocevar isn't embarrassed by being labeled chaos. He understands that attention, branding and conversation can be beneficial, as long as performance backs it up. Now we get to the biggest revelation before COTA. The news that changes the long-term picture entirely. Hocevar flat out shut down the Hendrick Motorsports rumors, and he did it as clearly as possible. After Kenny Wallace brought up the idea that Hocevar might be developing at Spire before eventually moving to Hendrick, Hocevar didn't hesitate. He immediately said he had signed a very long-term deal with Spire and that he's there for the next decade. Then he took it even further with one of the most memorable contract quotes you'll hear. He said the deal was written in the simplest terms imaginable. If he has a pulse, he'll race for Jeff Dickerson.